Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. 49ers fall in Miami 29-17 as they fall to 6-9 on the season, and that's going to make them, they'll be stamped now as a losing record team for the 2024 season in a game where they were in it. They had opportunities. Debo Samuel, as Matt Mayoko said on Twitter, looked suspiciously like himself, or the former version of Debo that we've become accustomed to throughout this one. Brock Purdy takes a big hit from Calais Campbell and throws an interception that basically snuffs out the Niners' chance there at a potential game-winning touchdown drive. And really the story of this one, I think, is going to be more about injuries. Offensive line that was already not playing well this season. Brock was under duress, I think, a lot of the time this season. And really, you saw the breakdown there on that play where Campbell just comes right through the line and hits Brock, and he just kind of lollipops one out there for an interception. But they lose Jalen Moore in this one. They lose Aaron Banks. Hell, Dre Greenlaw goes down after the opening couple of plays of this one. John Dickinson with me here as the Niners fall to the Dolphins 29-17. Takeaway from this one, JD.
Yeah, injuries and penalties, I think, are also the story of this one. 11 penalties for the 49ers and just penalties at inopportune times. 90 yards worth of penalties. But I think the one thing, and you heard from Kyle Shanahan there with Greg and Tim Ryan, and it's the fact that you've got first and goal on the 3, and it turns into a 41-yard field goal attempt that Jake Moody misses. Why? Because the 49ers can't get lined up right twice, and Ricky Pearsall involved in both of those. It's personal foul penalties from either frustration or being too aggressive on one end, and it's the inability to just be organized and line up properly on the other end. All told, I mean, just indicative of what we've seen far too much this season. In a way, you look at the Niners as they officially were eliminated right before kickoff of their game against the Dolphins because of the Rams win and the Commanders comeback win over the Eagles. But today was just more of what we've seen all season long as to why this 49ers season, Copes, has been so disappointing and will end up with a losing record. And why don't we get into that? The stat of the game, sponsored by Poppy Bank, located throughout California. Poppy Bank is here to help you hit your financial goals. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Why don't we go with the penalties? It's something that in the back part of this season, and I don't know if you want to look at the Green Bay game or the Buffalo game, as I think Green Bay is probably when things really kind of started to spiral because it just felt like things had gone from bad to worse. And one of the things that they had done, well in terms of playing somewhat clean football was that they weren't destroying themselves with penalties. They'd had some inopportune penalties. I think it's some key moments in the early part of the season in some of those games. The Rams game, I can think of one. The Cardinal game that they lost at home, they had some inopportune timing penalties, it felt like. But what seems to happen now what has seemed to happen is as the injuries have piled up, you've got guys who aren't playing or used to playing as many snaps. You've had young players like Ricky Pearsall come off of IR, come back, and they've struggled to find their place in the offense. And in a game where he had a couple of nice catches, it looked like they were targeting him early on. He sort of helped play them out of an opportunity there to come down and score some points. These are things that are going to get better, I guess, with reps, or that you would hope get better with reps. But to have two of those are mental errors. You can live with physical errors from a young player, but it's the mental reps that can, or the mental mistakes that can pull you out of a game. And penalties for the Niners, to me, that's a mental thing. They've got to be better about this. They were one of the least penalized teams in the league up until the Green Bay game. And since then, you've had more often than not games like this. 11 for 90 is what ultimately helped sink them. There's a handful of reasons they lost this one and why the season has gone as bad as it has. But since the Green Bay game, it just feels to me like not only are they not a good team, they're not a disciplined team by any stretch. Yeah, and it's discipline. I think it's lack of focus, but it's also preparation too. It's also the work that you're putting in during the week to be buttoned up. And I'll even go back one game prior to that. To me, the game that flipped this whole season for the 49ers, and there are many, and we can get into them in the next 90 minutes here that we're doing the show, but I think it was the Seattle game, even before the Green Bay game.
Yeah. To
have the offense play as poorly as they did in the home Seattle game on November 17th, and then have the defense play so well, but be holding on, and then finally they break at the end, and Geno Smith's able to lead the Seahawks down and make a couple of plays. That was the one that threw the whole thing off, because then you had in Green Bay the injuries meet the opponent, right?
Sure.
You have all these injuries, and you're reeling, and then Brock Purdy's not going to play, and all of a sudden you've got the back-to-back where you're playing Green Bay and Buffalo, two teams that you probably weren't going to beat anyway, but without having that Seattle game in your back pocket, it really put you in a position where you, if you couldn't get one of those games, you were essentially going to have to run the table, and that proved to be too tall of an ask for the 49ers as they lost the game to the Rams. But I think the Seattle game is the one that could have kept everything going. But too often, again, today you look up, 49ers scored 17 points.
Yeah.
How many times have we looked up and they can't get to 20, let alone the 30 that it ultimately would have taken today?
How do you evaluate the way Brock Purdy played today?
I thought he played pretty well, but then it's just there's always something kind of lacking there. The interception, he got hit as he threw it. I want to know where that ball was going.
Was he trying to go over the top to Juwan? He was the only receiver really in the area, but even he was like 5 or 6 yards deeper than where the ball went.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway on the pick. I mean, you look at the line at the end of the day, 26 of 40 for 313. He was really, he was getting the guys that needed to get the ball. I mean, George Kittle, 8 for 106. Debo, 7 for 96. Jennings and Pearsall were targeted, and both had 4 catches apiece. I mean, you look at the raw numbers, and I think you, other than the interception, you can say, hey, pretty good game from Brock Purdy. But that was my big takeaway on the pick was, yes, obviously Calais Campbell comes in, he blows it up. Brock can't get the ball where it needs to be. It's underthrown. It becomes an easy pick. But as I watched the play back twice, I'm like, gosh. And yeah, Kyle did say he was trying to layer it over the defender. But I thought that maybe would have been a poor decision pick, or at least had the potential to be if it hadn't been a got hit while he threw it pick.
Well, and yet again, the 49ers aren't able to stop the run. Devon Achane goes for a 50-yard touchdown run at the end just to ice it, and things were really kind of out of reach at that point anyway. But we'll talk more about this one. But things that were problems and have been problems throughout the year maintain their status, I think, for the 49ers. They're not stopping the run well. They're giving up. I mean, they're not terrible in terms of where they stand at like yards per attempt against.
But it's the put away.
It's the put away
when a team
runs.
has Yep. When a team has a chance to put them away, they put them away, and we saw it at the end of the game.
30 carries today for Miami for 166 yards. And the 49ers really, due in large part because the offensive line was hurt, but even before they started dropping off the offensive line today with 3 guys going down and the left side just being decimated by injuries today for the Niners, they really couldn't run the ball effectively. In fact, the guy who seemed to run it the best was Debo Samuel, had a long of 13, 5 carries for 25. That's the best he's carried the ball at that clip all season. And he seemed like there was times where he was bouncing off of guys and kind of looked like Debo Samuel that we were used to. But Patrick Taylor, 8 carries for 24, really never had anything going and was almost responsible for what could have been an earlier interception had they picked that off a little bit cleaner. Pat Taylor goes for 8, Debo for 5 carries, 1 for Juszczyk, and then Brock Purdy with 4. They only ran it 18 times for 81 yards.
Yeah, and part of that, I think, was being behind for a good chunk of the second half of the game.
Sure.
and toward halftime. Taylor was running it okay in the first couple of series.
He had one 9-yard run, and then they didn't,
Yeah, it was, I mean, again, the numbers are obviously, they end up bad. I mean, it's 8 for 24, but 9 of them are on one play.
Sure.
So that means you end up 7 for 15 on the other. on the other.
That's who it carried, right.
Yeah, carry. So it really wasn't an effective game for Taylor. How about Debo? I mean, forget about the gun runs and the cute stuff for Debo. Like they lined Debo up at running back and handed it to him, which is something that I found to be interesting because I was kind of wondering if they would maybe think about doing that a little bit earlier in the year, but then they've been so ineffective with a lot of the typical Debo runs. Maybe they went away from it. It was interesting to me what made today where you basically admit you're eliminated, and Kyle even said it in the post-game press conference. Yeah, we really came to grips with it last week, although it wasn't official until right before kickoff when the early games all went final. He basically said they came to grips with it last week. What made today the day when you're essentially going into the game eliminated, your game plan, you're thinking of it as a team that's eliminated, yeah, you're going to put Debo back there and really truly treat him more like a running back. I guess it's the circumstances of the Garindo injury and being to running backs 5, 6, and 7, but it was interesting that they just really let it hang today, I thought, in terms of getting the ball to Debo in situations that they really have been more reluctant to get the ball to Debo in. Did it make much of a difference, all told? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he did have a good game receiving, 5 yards a tote with 13 coming on 1 in 5 carries. I mean, that's not a spectacular game, but the power and the impact that it puts on the defense to have Debo hammering it in there at times between the tackles. I think that's something I'm a little bit surprised they didn't attempt to do more of earlier in the year, and I'm curious as to what made today be the day, other than their top 4 running backs are obviously out.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners fall in Miami in sort of limp fashion is what I'll call it. 29-17 is the final.
They were flaccid.
Flaccid fashion is the way the Niners go down today in Miami. So they'll get on a plane and come home. They don't play again until next Monday at home against the Detroit Lions, who are still looking to try to lock up that number 1 seed. Minnesota's going to have an opportunity to get involved in that as well. We can talk about what happened around the NFL a little bit later as well. We'll check in with our guy Larry Krueger, who will join us here on the postgame show in just a little while. And we will, of course, hear from Kyle Shanahan. Adam Copeland, JD, Niners lose 29-17. It's going to be a losing season for the Niners as they fall to 6-9. More to come, only here on the Sports Leader.
I mean, just not good enough. I feel like we, hurt ourselves, early in the game with some penalties and things, and just plays were left out there. I felt like, so just overall, just you start thinking about the plays that could have changed the game. Get some points up on the board, get some momentum, and so when we walk off the field, it's like, dang it, we had plenty of opportunities and we didn't finish. So. Yeah, it hurt.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. That was Brock Purdy after the Niners lost in Miami 29-17. Brock, in general, had a pretty good day, 26 of 40. I don't think they would have won half to throw it 40 times. It means they were playing from behind, and really they were ineffective at running the football, 18 for 81 at 4.5 a carry. Brock, 65% completion rate, 313 passing yards. He was sacked 3 times. He threw 2 touchdowns and that 1 interception that on that final drive, right at the 2-minute warning, or first play out of the 2-minute warning, really ended the Niners' hopes at a late-game comeback here. We'll make that the difference maker of the game, sponsored by Benjamin Moore Paints. Experience the Benjamin Moore retail difference at our independently owned authorized retailers today or at benjaminmoore.com, and sponsored by Abundant Life Weight Loss. Call 925-594-7110 to start your journey today. In terms of other things that were a difference maker in this one, or lack thereof, how about pressure or turnovers? Again, the 49ers, this is going to be something they're going to have to talk about or figure out. When you go back to how bad the 49ers were when Kyle Shanahan first took over the team and tried to rebuild it, remember they had that one season, it might have been 2017, JD, where they had 2 total interceptions as a team. They matched that number in like week 1 or 2 of the following season. Once they went out and they got Richard Sherman, they added some weapons. Or it could have been 2018. It was like that. Then 2019, they flipped the script. Bottom line is they've got a number of games here without forcing any turnovers. They lose the turnover battle, only 1-0 in this one. But with the inability to create pressure after the 7 sacks of Caleb Williams a couple weeks ago, I don't believe they got to Matt Stafford at all last week, did they? If they did, it was very little.
They did not.
They did not. So now back-to-back games without a sack here. They did not get to Tua whatsoever, and he was effective enough. 22 of 34, 215, and they just gashed on the ground at a 5.5 per carry clip. What did you see in this one from the defensive line?
Yeah, the defensive line just hasn't been good enough all year long, and I'll even throw in the 2020 season when it comes to the turnovers, the 6-10 season there, the last bad season, non-playoff season that the 49ers had going back 4 years ago. That was another year where, a bunch of different things did go wrong for the 49ers, and they were playing 3 quarterbacks in that year, but they also didn't get turnovers and turned it over a lot, in part because they were playing a lot of backup quarterbacks. Whether it was C.J. Beathard or Nick Mullins behind Jimmy Garoppolo. And so that has been a theme in these years that have really gotten away from the 49ers, and they haven't made the playoffs. And look, it's the greatest single game changer is turnovers. If you can win the turnover battle, even if you're just an average team in other ways, that can be good enough depending upon the year and when you get them to make you a playoff team, even if in other ways maybe you're a little bit fraudulent. We've seen it with the 49ers, I think, work in the other direction. There are a lot of these different things when you look at the yardage and output and the way the Niners move the ball between the 20s, the way they defend, especially up until the fourth quarter, and the way they've defended. I mean, the yardage numbers don't match the point totals and the efficiency when it comes to being able to put it into the end zone or keep the opponent out of the end zone. And the reason all of that's out of whack is simple. It's the turnovers. But as far as the defensive line and all that goes, the defensive line has not been good enough from the start of the year. They had injuries on top of it. It is the biggest single position group on the team, especially defensive tackle, that needs to be addressed this offseason for this team. They need 2, 3, 4 different, I think, defensive tackles, at least a starter as well. We'll see if Jordan Elliott's back. But they got to go get somebody in the draft that just clogs it up and wreaks havoc on the interior of the defensive line.
Niners fall 29-17 to the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Let me ask you this, just a brief thought here on this, JD. Is Jake Moody back next year?
I think we're getting to the point where he might be back with competition next year.
Again, you used I don't want to say wasted. You used a third rounder on a kicker, and you expect that to be as automatic as you can have if you're going to go get a young guy like that and hope that he's going to be your dude for the next, generation of 49ers special teams plays. And it seems that he's regressed this year. We talk injury early in the season and all that, but this is a guy who's supposed to have a big leg. He missed an absolute kick that he should have had today, and this has been a sort of a thing for him throughout the season. I know he's been hurt, but special teams has been problematic. When you're leaving points on the field in terms of red zone opportunities, you got to come away with some of these made kicks, and I not going well for him. I would not be shocked if he was not back next year.
Yeah, 16-10 at the point in which he misses the field goal, and that was when Pearsall had a couple of the penalties, and then he hooks the 41-yarder, misses it to the left. For whatever reason, it's that 38 to 43-yard range that he really struggles with. more than any other range. And you saw Kyle throw the tablet down, and I think part of it was frustration based on the penalties that led to needing to even kick a field goal when you have 1st and goal at the 3 and you're about to punch it in and maybe take the lead in the game. But to have it end up with a field goal attempt and a should-be-made field goal attempt at that, and have it not be made, I think it brings right back to the surface the fact that Moody has not been the kicker when he's been healthy that the 49ers had drafted him to be. And he was a little shaky at different times last year. He was great in the Super Bowl, except for the PAT that ended up getting blocked. And this year it's been up and down. And just when you think he's figured it out, and this is the part of the emotional roller coaster, I feel like, and I think Niner fans can relate to this. I want to get your take on it. Just when you think Moody's got it dialed, he misses one like the one that he missed today, and you go, oh, yeah, okay, I guess he really can miss one of those at any point. And then just when you kind of are starting to worry about every single kick, or like, oh, man, he's not going to hit he'll hit 3, 4, 5, 7 in a row for a game or a couple of games, and then you kind of get back to not being worried about him, and then there will inevitably be another one like today. And so just you never are fully comfortable with Jake Moody, even on those kicks that should be makes like the one today.
Niners fall to the Miami Dolphins, and they fall to 6-9 on the season. That's going to solidify the losing season in terms of record for the Niners. Best they could finish now is 8-9. 2 games left. One against the Detroit Lions next Monday. Then they'll go on January 5th to Arizona to take on the Cardinals in the final game of 2024. Dolphins still alive, by the way. Tony Romo made sure you knew of it, too. He really walked you through every possible scenario. I was like, what the hell's going on here? It's Tony Romo.
Hey, you want to know why we're still doing this game today? Meeting him.
You want to know why I'm here? Here's the meaning of it. Nance. I'll tell you all about it, Jim. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. We'll catch up with our guy Larry Krueger momentarily here on the 49er postgame show as they fall 29-17 to the Dolphins. We got to get into some of the injuries on the offensive line. We'll talk more about Dre Greenlaw as well, who left the game very early, and it wasn't even the same leg that he had the Achilles tear on last year. He dealt with right Achilles tendonitis a couple of seasons ago, tears his left Achilles last year. Now he comes back and he's got a calf injury. He seemed frustrated, angry on the sideline, and did not return to the game. We'll talk more about the offensive line and some of these injuries in just a little bit. Adam Copeland, JD with you. Niners lose. They fall to 6-9, only here on the Sports Leader.
It's happened way too many times this year, and when it rains, it pours. It's very frustrating all around, offense, defense, special teams. All year when we have that many penalties, it's kind of a harbinger of loss, and that's what it's been this year, and we need to kind of rally together and just appreciate the opportunity to go play this game.
There's Nick Bosa, who did not hit the quarterback today. Did not hit the quarterback last week and didn't make a whole lot of noise. We'll make that the focus here of protecting the quarterback, sponsored by the Contra Costa County Office of the Sheriff. Protect your community and apply for your new career in law enforcement at cocosheriff.org today, and by Planet Orange, effective, eco-friendly pest control. I've said this to you in relation to Nick Bosa, I think, already this season, JD. Like, when I look at guys who you call game wreckers, who were supposed to be, and you believe when Nick Bosa's at his best that that's the type of player he is, and it just hasn't been that for him since he won the Defensive Player of the Year award, since he got the contract and missed all of preseason and training camp last year before joining the team. I think it was in Pittsburgh was the opening game last season. He's supposed to be the guy on the defensive line. He's one of the highest paid players in the league, was the highest paid defensive end, and he does not have the same impact, or has not had the same impact on a game alongside some of his defensive game wreckers, or guys who are labeled that. T.J. Watt is a much different type of game wrecker. Myles Garrett seems to do it each and every week regardless of who's around him. It's become problematic, I think, that Nick Bosa is not giving you enough and he's not filling up the stat sheet. And again, it's not all on him, but this is his expertise, is hitting the quarterback, and they're just not doing it.
It's not, and I think there is going to be a microscope on Nick Bosa next year from the jump to make more of an impact. I think a big part of it right now is the fact that he's not healthy, to the extent that, again, I know if guys are healthy enough, they get out there. I don't think, and I said it in the pregame, so I'm not going back after the fact. To me, he shouldn't even be out there at this point. And I would imagine he probably won't be now that they've been mathematically eliminated. I think more guys that did go today probably won't go. They had other players get banged up in this game as well. But I think what we've seen is a limited Nick Bosa in terms of health. And again, not an excuse, but a limited Nick Bosa in terms of health is a much less effective Nick Bosa. And so, when you get to the point where you basically are admitting that you're out of it, even mathematically, though they hadn't been until right before the game started, I think you do start to wonder, all right, what are guys doing? And again, I don't want to turn the whole show into whether guys should or shouldn't be playing or anything like that. I think they're fortunate that something very serious didn't happen with Dre Greenlaw today. I think they're fortunate that maybe something didn't happen with Nick Bosa today. But I just think he's been significantly hampered when he's tried to go out there and play through a number of the injuries that he's had. So I want to give him a fresh start in the offseason as far as that goes. But the reality is he's paid to be a game wrecker. And immediately, week 1 in September, he has to be that next year. All excuses and this or that off the table at that point, Copes.
And in terms of the flip side of protecting the quarterback here, Brock Purdy sacked 3 times in this game, and a crucial one. He takes a bunch of hits, too, but he takes a big hit on the interception that he throws there. Jake Brendel's had a really tough year. There's a lot of thought that he should be maybe replaced at center going into next season. You thought maybe you'd have some extra help there this year, and you did not at that position. Aaron Banks goes down with what looked like it was going to be a season-ending and maybe a years-long injury now with a potential MCL tear. We'll find that out, but they ruled him out almost immediately. It didn't look good how he went down, and he was screaming on the field. Jalen Moore, who was playing left tackle, he wants to be out there. He has a quad injury. He doesn't return because of the injury, and he's going to be a free agent. So they put Spencer Burford, who I think Tim was saying hadn't played left tackle since he was at UT San Antonio before he was drafted by the 49ers. So he's over there at left tackle. The entire left side seems to get decimated in this one. Nick Zakelj has to come in and play, a guy who has not played a whole lot of reps this year. They couldn't run the ball effectively. They couldn't protect Brock, really. He was running for his life. Just sort of big picture thought on the offensive line and where it is going forward, because to your point about guys who shouldn't be out there, I mean, Brock's going to play, I think, certainly next week against the Lions, but you're not feeling great about him out there without any protection. No,
you're looking at your backup left guard, maybe a third string left tackle, and other guys who might be trying to be rotated in because you want to get a look at some young players. So I think that definitely factors into the equation as far as Brock goes. They have to take, and this is where I'll switch the conversation to the internal look that Kyle Shanahan has to take at himself once this thing ends here in a couple of weeks. I think he truly needs to take a step back and go to Cancun or go to Cabo or wherever he likes to go when he has that season ending, check out, unplug, whatever it is type of vacation, and just take a look in the mirror at things that philosophically he views a certain way, and whether or not maybe some changes to that need to be made. And I use the offensive line to kind of springboard that part of the conversation, Copes, because we talk about it all the time. We've talked about it for years. It does, even though when the 49ers have had some effective offensive lines, it feels, other than Trent Williams, cobbled together. It feels like they're trying to get more with less. And I know Kyle's been asked about it, and he prefers that they spend their money on the skill players and the guys who are going to get the ball in their hands. But as much as we talk about that, and we should, as it relates to Brock and the contract that he inevitably, it feels like, is going to get, you have to be able to protect him, and you have to be able to not have him running for his life and have some semblance of balance in this offense. So I think Kyle has to take a deep breath when this thing ends. Again, he's not going anywhere. He shouldn't be going anywhere, Copes. But that willingness to deep breath, self-evaluate philosophically things that maybe he could do better or the organization could do better with him as the lead person in charge, and just see if maybe switching the way you view things can help turn things around and make you a team that can be a contender again. Yeah, I mean, there's some recalibration that has to happen, but there has to be a concerted effort to rebuild, one, pressure on the defensive side of the balls up front on the D-line, but also you've invested so much money in other positions here. You've got to make an effort here to make sure Brock is protected. If you're going to invest in a quarterback like that, I feel like that was sort of the deal with when they went and they got Trent Williams. They paid Jimmy Garoppolo. You want to make sure if you're buying a house, you've got insurance on that house. You go get a left tackle to protect him. And with the uncertain future of Trent Williams, really an offensive line that's taken a step back this year, there's got to be a focus internally on that and how they improve at those positions and not just the skill positions, because you're only as good as those that protection will allow you to be in delivering the rock to guys like George Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, and so on. Well, and it's interesting, too, because I think we know on the defensive line they're going to look to do it. Because philosophically, even though Kyle's an offensive guy, philosophically he believes that that's where games are won, right? In the trenches, but in particular by having a fierce defensive line. And so knowing that, when we start to flip to the offensive line, you ask me the question, and we kind of go back and forth on it, like, hey, do they need to improve the offensive line? And fans, I think more than maybe anything else we talk about on this radio station, when fans get involved, they say, got to improve the offensive line. Offensive line's got to get better at these 2 or 3 positions on the offensive line. And then when we start to discuss it, we can say it's important and debate how important it is, but every time we do it, I kind of stop, and in the back of my mind, I think, well, I just don't know that Kyle Shanahan, because he said it, values it at the level that we're discussing it. So as much as we can stand and say, hey, there has to be some kind of a change, it really truly needs to be more of a philosophical change, I think, than just hey, go get a better right guard. Like, how you view the right guard position or the left guard position or the right tackle position is really where the adjustment needs to be made, because there have been players the 49ers could have drafted that they have chosen not to draft over the years that maybe could have filled some of those holes, but for whatever reason they haven't been a fit for Kyle Shanahan's philosophy, not in terms of his offense and his scheme, but in terms of, no, don't want to get roped into paying a guy at this position X, and it means maybe I can't pay another skill position Y, and that leads to being in a worse off position overall. And this is the I don't want to say growing pains. These are the adjustments and the recalibrations that I think teams in the NFL have to make, and why it's so hard to remain successful year after year after year. It's designed for so much parity, and the contract situations are not generally allotted for you to be able to pay and do what you're doing and remain as successful as they have. Look at McVay, and I know McVay's won a Super Bowl, and he did it with Stafford after they made the trade. They upgraded from Goff to Stafford, although Goff's become a great player again with Detroit. But sure. Look at McVay. their reboot since they won the Super Bowl. They've done a reboot where they have almost a completely different team now, with Stafford still, but a completely different team that's contending again when it looked like week 3 when the 49ers played in L.A., like they were done. They were 0-2, done in that game. I mean, they look like a team that's going to win 4 games. They're probably going to win 11 games.
Yeah. And
the NFC West. Look at Green Bay. Made it to NFC Championship games. LaFleur, another guy with Kyle. Aaron Rodgers, gone. New young quarterback, young receivers, revamped defense, running game. Like, they've done a complete reboot in Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. And so I think it's interesting. You start looking around at some of these other teams that have been able to do it and do it successfully. And it's the open-mindedness. Philly, Sirianni's not a Shanahan disciple, but Philly looked like they were cooked a year ago. I think there's a lot of similarities to the Niners right now, the season that they've had this year, and Philly last year after losing the Super Bowl. Philly able to get it together. Now they ended up with an offensive player of the year in Saquon Barkley in all likelihood, and that's helped them fix things. But they were able to do it. Minnesota has retooled their defense and their quarterback position and their skill spots with O'Connell these last couple of years. So it's been done with some of these other guys who are philosophically aligned with Kyle Shanahan. Now I think it's the 49ers' turn to get this little quick pivot back into, everybody thinks they're on the downturn. Actually, no, they're not. They're going to win 11 games next year and be right back in the mix.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. 49ers fall to the Miami Dolphins today, 29-17, and this is where we're going to be in the next 2 weeks, just talking big picture. We're also, in the next segment, going to be talking to our guy, Larry Krueger. Of course, a Niners Nightly, 49er Forecast, and the Krug Show. We'll check in with Larry, see what he saw from this one as the Niners fall in Miami, 29-17, a lifeless run game for the 49ers. But, hey, Debo Samuel showed up. How about that? Right as the Niners get eliminated, just in time for the Niners to get eliminated.
Who was number 1?
Yeah, it was Debo. That was him. I know. It's wild. Shocked me, too. We'll talk to Larry Krueger next on the Sports Leader.
No, I think our coaches does a really good job of coaching us, and the penalties that, on offense, all the pre-snap penalties, it's just bad football. And I don't put that on Coach Shanahan. I don't put that on the wide receivers coach, the line coach, tight ends coach. That's on us. We know what the formations are. We have to go out there and execute. I messed up one. The wide receivers on the left side did 1 and 2. I'm just putting ourselves in a hole when we're already in a hole. So something that we have to address and just get better at, and just lock in a little bit better. Because if we don't do those things, probably a different outcome of the game.
I mean, maybe very well have been. There's George Kittle on the 49ers today. Some of the penalties and the 2 formation penalties on Ricky Pearsall. He talked about the one on himself. I mean, Kyle was very frustrated with the Pearsall one. And again, with young players, it's the mental mistakes that will kill you. And that's what George Kittle's talking about there. Those are mental things. You know the formations. You know where you got to be. You just got to be locked in. You got to know what the situation is, where you are on the field at all times. They had one, too, where they lined up offsides where, can't remember who the D tackle was. Who lined up offsides on the ball. Do you remember that where the ball was behind his head? He was across the line of scrimmage. I'm if you turn your head to the right and the ball's behind you, you went too far, brother. You know what I mean? You gotta lock in, especially when the margin for error is so thin for this team right now. They've gone 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and continually shoot themselves in the foot, and they don't do anything to take the ball away from anybody else. We've made the connection with our guy Larry Krueger, Niners Nightly, the Krug Show, and of course 49er Forecast right here on the Sports Leader. Krug, what's going on, bro?
Oh, man, it was a rough game to watch for sure. And, we talked about it in the pregame, guys. I said, the team, I really felt like the team that ran the ball better was going to be the team that won. And I leaned towards the Dolphins because of Achane. And he was, the Niners didn't do a very good job of tackling him. And then sure enough, in the fourth quarter, I mean, that is just, the Niners in the fourth quarter this year, minus 53 in point differential, dead last in the NFL. They just fade. They consistently fade on both sides of the ball in the fourth quarter, and then Brock with a terrible interception there at the end. The defense got sort of a stop, right? Gave the offense one more chance. They were going to have to drive the length of the field, and they couldn't even get any rhythm going at all because Purdy throws the quick pick. So, if you wanted to see the Niners play hard and lose, you got what you wanted. Everybody else, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, as you look at it, what do you think of Brock's game today overall? The numbers are good in terms of yardage. You talked about the pick. He was really getting the ball, I thought, to the guys that needed to get the ball. I thought there were some pretty creative play calls today as well. For the most part, but then you look up and he throws the pick and the 49ers fail to get to 20. Forget about 30, Larry. There have been too many times this year where the Niners haven't been able to get to 20. Add today to the list. In our ever daily evaluation of Brock Purdy, what did today do for you, good or bad?
I mean, I thought overall, he played pretty well. I kind of think when you looked at his game, I kind of felt like his degree of difficulty in this game was quite a bit more difficult than Tua. I thought McDaniel did a better job than Shanahan at making the game easy for Tua. Tua didn't make a lot of tough plays. It seemed like Purdy was degree of difficulty was making, challenged to make a lot of tough plays. I also didn't love the fact that, they couldn't run it, so it was 18 runs, 40 passes. Where the Dolphins maintained balance, the 49ers did not maintain balance. I don't know about you guys, but to me, I really like the look when they move Purdy out of the pocket. To me, if there's one thing that you can kind of point to when every time he struggles, is there's a lot of defenders who get hands on the football around the line of scrimmage, and he gets balls tipped. There were too many of those in this game, but I thought overall, that interception at the end is just, once again, we started Niners Nightly at the beginning of the year, and the guys made a promo, right? And the promo had me saying, hey, look, when Brock throws a pick, and when Brock turns it over individually, the 49ers don't win. Yeah. And when he doesn't, they don't lose. And I told myself, hey, I mentioned this to Kev, I'm like, we're going to have to get with the guys over at KNBR and probably change that promo in a week or two because it's bound to not hold up. It's now December 22nd, and it's literally rung true the entire season, and it still continues to. When he turns it over, they don't win, and when he doesn't, they do win. And he's very, very aggressive, even though Shanahan pushed back on that notion when I suggested that and said that directly to him in a presser this week. He's like, I wouldn't say he's overly aggressive. Okay. But, I mean, there were a lot of examples today where he had guys open underneath and challenged down the field. And, of course, that pick was really bad because he had other guys open downfield. He had a rusher in his face. He took a pretty big hit on the shoulder from Calais Campbell, and then it looked like he got concussed on the play as well on the way to the ground. But, yeah, you can't make that throw in that situation.
Talking to Larry Krueger here. Niners fall to the Miami Dolphins in Miami, 29-17. Back-to-back games now for the Niner defense without a sack, Larry. They create no pressure, and that's part of it, too, is you're talking, winning the turnover battle and Brock not turning it over himself, and when he does, they lose games. They're also not turning anybody over. They're not creating any pressure on quarterbacks. Tua kind of had whatever he wanted to do today, and you pointed out the run game, 30 for 166. The D-line has just been decimated. Now the O-line, too. Just your thoughts on what you've seen. I mean, we keep talking about having to rebuild this thing and recalibrate this defensive line, but they appear to need a lot of help, and I don't know what the future of Nick Sorensen holds.
Yeah, I mean, Sorensen's defense was third in the league, second in pass D coming into today, but like 17th or 18th in points allowed. So it's a terrible situational defense. This game was particularly frustrating because the Niners did get Nick Bosa back. It was going to be about who could heat up the other team's quarterback. And I mentioned to you guys earlier in the week, hey, Bradley Chubb was rumored to be back. And I'm like, wow, if Bradley Chubb is back, that could be significant. Well, he wasn't back. And then Nick Bosa, was he going to play? Was he not going to play? Well, he did play. And then you look at the Dolphins tackles, Teron Armstead, the left tackle, and Kendall Lamb, their backup, who's now starting at right tackle. Those guys had been getting burned, and yet the Niners couldn't do anything. I mean, absolutely no pressure on Tua. He stood back there and just did whatever he wanted. He seemed like his rhythm was pretty much uninterrupted. So this is a 49er defense that, it's meant for their defensive line to kind of impact everything. And when their defensive line's not making an impact, suddenly, their defense looks pretty ordinary, huh? And they get picked apart, and that's what we saw. And then Greenlaw going out early, in a way, I thought was kind of a blessing, just from the standpoint of, not that you ever want to see him hurt, but, I mean, this guy needs to be signed. This guy he doesn't need to play. He needs more rest. He needs to, they need to take him off the field. And I don't know how you guys feel, but as far as I'm concerned, now that they're mathematically eliminated, I don't know if I want to see Bosa or Warner or Brock or, 3 or 4 guys the rest of the way. I think the only thing that could make the season worse would be if you lost one of your really, really key guys that, for week 1 next year because they got hurt in week 17 this year. So, when you're already mathematically eliminated. So I'd love to see Tanner Mordecai, Jalen Graham, Sam Aquinu, just anybody but your stars.
Yeah, I'm with you on Bosa and Warner specifically, but they're going to be so banged up on the offensive line here, Larry, with some of the injuries they sustained today with Jalen Moore and Banks going out, that I do think you have to wonder about Purdy, although I would like to see, and I get it, if you're not going to have a bunch of guys in your offensive line, then it doesn't make sense to play Purdy. I still kind of want to see Purdy play, but maybe rest some of the other guys that are banged up. I want to ask you about Debo, though. Debo looked more like Debo today. What made today different? I mean, they lined him up legitimately at running back because of some of the other injuries. He had 5 carries. I think all of them were like in traditional, he was lined up in the backfield plays. They were trying to get the ball to him. What made Debo more effective today than we've seen him be at a lot of points this year?
Debo's really, really, really smart guy, and he's a very competitive guy, and he's a guy that knows the truth, right? He can say whatever he wants to say, but deep down he knows the truth. He knows that, earlier this year he pointed the finger at others. He knows that didn't look good. He knows that when he was confronted with his own backslide production-wise, he kind of said, I'm not backsliding, I'm not struggling, I'm just not touching the ball. And then life called his bluff, and he got the ball, and he fumbled, or he didn't catch the key touchdown and didn't really produce. and he knew that he looked bad, and he knew that he was going to get ripped and was getting ripped, and this was his answer. It was like, hey, are you going to wither away, or are you going to fight and keep going? And I thought this was an awesome game for him, because this kind of just shows that, fight or flight, man. You're pushed into a corner. What are you going to do? And this guy's
Does it make
fight.
you feel better about him for next year if he's around, or no?
Well, I mean, first of all, he is going to be around because Shanahan is the coach. Shanahan loves him. And so I think he's going to be around. It does make me feel good that that there's some juice in the tank still, and that there's some fire there, and that, if he's going to be around next year, that, he could be potentially productive. Yeah, it was really good to see him have, 130 yards or whatever it was that he had today, and kind of answer. But he needed this one. I mean, he needed this one. He had been called out by everybody, all of the ex-players on TV, everybody. And he knew he needed a big performance, and good for him. He fired.
Talking to Larry Krueger here. Larry, where are we with Jake Moody, man? Would it be surprising if he were not on this roster next year?
I mean, he's a good guy. They invested a high pick in him. Lynch has maintained that he's going to be their kicker for years to come. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's the consistency's not there. He's got a good leg. He was a high pick. I mean, I'd hate to see him be cut and then wind up being, a kicker for 20 years in the NFL somewhere else. But I don't know. I mean, it's just I really don't like investing day 2 picks in kickers or punters, because it adds a lot more pressure to a position that already carries a ton of pressure.
Inherently, right.
Right. So why add more pressure? Where it's like, oh my goodness, now there's pressure on the GM, the coach. It's not just the guy your kicker missed. Your kicker that you invested a 3rd-round pick in missed. So it's just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm not sure if I would bring him back. But you know what? I'll say this: if you are this bad on special teams, you're going to have to make an example of somebody. Either Moody has to be cut, or Schneider has to be let go. They can't have this no accountability thing going on special teams. They had more screw ups today, more penalties. Somebody's got to pay the price for that, and I hate that. I hate that aspect of this sport. But I think it's also, if you don't respond when your roster fails, you lose some of the belief of the players, and so there has to be repercussions for bad play.
What translates from today just overall to next year? What would be the best thing you saw, and maybe the worst thing you saw today that would concern you? Big picture.
Yeah, that's good. I would say the best thing that I'm seeing is Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, D. Winters playing fast. I think those guys stood out today. I mean, the Niners have a good young secondary, and that's going to be the basis for their defensive turnaround. They need new replenishments. They need to replenish that D line, especially the tackles. They need to get, much faster linebackers to go with the guys that they have. But they got a good young secondary. And I thought Renardo Green had some really nice snaps against Tyreek Hill. I thought Winters was flying around. He made a couple of real nice hits. Mustafa had a big hit. Those young defenders are continuing to ascend, and that's a great thing.
Before we let you go, Larry, the injury report sponsored by Habas Law. They'll fight to make it right. Visit HabasLaw.com and by Mike Council Plumbing. When you need plumbing, think green and go with Mike Council Plumbing online at mcplumbing.com. First, just the offensive line. We talked about how decimated they were. Nick Zakelj comes in, has to play left guard. Spencer Burford goes over to left tackle after Jalen Moore goes down with a quad injury. Aaron Banks gets rolled up on. That was not good for anybody. It looks like he could be out for all of next season or most of it, depending on what the MRI says, but they ruled him out immediately. Dre Greenlaw gets hurt. But I guess my question is, in terms of the offensive line, I mean, you're going out there with like 3rd and 4th string O-linemen now at certain positions. The uncertain future of a guy like Trent Williams and whether or not he even sees the field again for the remainder of the season, which Kyle Shanahan said this week could be in jeopardy. How do you feel about Brock being out there for the next 2? I mean, you just talked about the hit that he took, and you thought maybe a pretty tough one. You can't feel that comfortable with the lack of the run game you have, how much he's dropping back 40 times today, and you got 2 games left with 4th-string offensive linemen out there.
Yeah, no more Brock. No more Brock. Not this year. I'd just say, you know what?
Bubble wrap him.
Yeah, you improved this year in certain areas as a runner. I'm sure there's areas that if we got into it with Greasy and Shanahan, they would, and Brock. There's areas that he improved in. He regressed significantly in some areas because of, I think the surrounding cast around him kind of regressed. I think his clock, which was so perfectly set in his early years, has been a little off all year. There's times where he feels pressure. There isn't any. There's times he gets real aggressive. He needs to take the check down.
Yep.
His risk reward. I mean, that is the position. It's about you're going to put the ball in harm's way, but it's risk versus reward. And he's been so good risk reward wise. And I just think that for whatever reason, maybe speeding him up a little bit, maybe all the extra running and the thing kind of breaking down around him, his clock is a little off. And so he needs to get that back. He needs to kind of clear his head. I think it would be good for him to watch the final couple games. And let's see Tanner Mordecai. Just not because he's going to take anybody's job, but let's just find out. Let's take some inventory. I think the last couple games would be perfect to see. Let's see Izzy Abanaconda. Let's see Tanner Mordecai. Wide receiver wise, let's see if we can get Pearsall and Cowing in some kind of a rhythm. Let's see a Jalen Graham and maybe some young DBs start to get some confidence. And I think that's really it. But there's going to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made because this thing is they're several steps behind the contenders, and they were right there in the Super Bowl. They were eye to eye with the Chiefs. They're no longer eye to eye with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Lions, the Eagles, these teams, the Packers. These teams are all better, and they're all younger.
Maybe even the Rams now, Larry.
Maybe the Rams, maybe the Cardinals. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of teams that are better and younger, and so you need that 86 draft. You need that high draft position, but I think you then need to trade back into the late 20s and early 30s, start your draft there, but with a lot more ammo, and you got to hit. You got to hit on day one and day two. But it's not, you're never as far away as it seems. Right now, things seem bleak, and they're obviously not going to the playoffs. It's been a bad year, but I think a good off season, and they'll be right back competing.
Well, and hell, maybe a fourth place schedule, huh? If we take one of those. Larry Krueger.
That helps.
Larry Krueger, you hear him on the Krueger Show, of course, going on at all hours of the day and night. And then, of course, Niners Nightly, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7. And just tomorrow, right? Is it your only Niners Nightly of the week is Monday?
Yeah, just Monday, and then we're going to do a little Christmas vacation with the fam, and really excited. Hope you guys both, it's been a real pleasure working with both of you guys throughout this football season. Two of my favorites. Hope you guys have phenomenal holidays and get some rest and some relaxation with the fam.
Yeah, it'll be great, man. Enjoy your time off. We'll talk to you, I guess, in 2025. We'll talk to you next Monday, before 2025, after Christmas, Larry. Merry Christmas, bro.
Thanks, guys. Have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and go Niners. There will be a better day than today.
Yeah, I sure hope
Thanks,
so.
Larry.
Jeez,
May not be till September,
though. May not be till September. 29-17, the final. Niners fall to the Miami Dolphins. When we come on back, we've got the postgame interview with 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan. We'll play that for you. Let you know what he thought after his team falls to 6-9. They'll have a losing record with the 49ers for 2024. When we come on back, you'll hear from Kyle Shanahan, Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you, only here on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners fall 29-17 to the Miami Dolphins in Miami, who, by the way, they're still alive. 7-8 of the Dolphins are still needing some help, as Tony Romo told you many times during the game today. Scenarios and situations for how the Dolphins could get in, but they need some help for sure. The Niners are going to have a losing season as they fall to 6-9 after this one. Brock Purdy in the game, 26 of 40 for 313, 2 touchdowns, but it's the interception just after the 2-minute warning near the end of the game there that snuffed out the 49ers' hopes and potential of a game-winning touchdown drive. And as Larry Krueger just said, maybe time to put Brock in bubble wrap, considering what the offensive line has done, and just take a look at what you have inventory-wise within the organization, whether that's practice squad guys, some young guys you want to see get some work. That we have seen a whole lot from a lot of young guys just due to injury this year, JD. Let's hear from 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan after the Niners fall to 6-9. That's going to be our post-game interview sponsored by the Handler Union Square Hotel, San Francisco's oldest family-owned hotel. Here's Kyle Shanahan.
All right, guys, injuries from the game. Greenlaw, right calf, never returned. Leonard Floyd, shoulder, did return. Jalen Moore, quad, did not return. Aaron Banks, knee, did not return. D. Winters, chest, did not return. Go ahead.
They moved Banks out pretty quickly in the press box. Does that denote the seriousness of that?
Yeah, I mean, they thought it was most likely an MCL.
What can you tell us about Dre's situation? Is that a reason for concern, the cap?
I mean, it can be. It was the fourth play, or one of the first 4 plays. I know it was the first drive. He felt tightness in the calf, so once that happened, we shut him down. So we'll see if he pulled it or anything, but we didn't test any more after that.
Kyle, he had tendinitis in that leg last year at the end, Achilles tendinitis. Is there a connection between the two things here?
The Achilles tendinitis last year to the calf today?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
You guys were officially eliminated from the playoffs even before kickoff, so were you aware of that? And then just what kind of pall, I guess, did that cast over the game?
No, I wasn't aware of that, but that wouldn't have did nothing with the game. I mean, we kind of had that vibe last week. I know it wasn't official, but we understand numbers, so we kind of knew that last week.
At what point did you learn that playoff contention had been eliminated?
I mean, I knew pretty much was last week, so, I mean, they told me after the game here that it was official with those 2 games, but we understand what 1% chances or whatever it was, so pretty much last week.
How much is the penalties, everything, and just how do you feel about, what did you tell you guys after the game?
That no matter what's going on, when you have those penalties like that, you don't deserve to win. You know, the offense, the biggest thing was the lack of concentration. And we should have first and goal at the 2, no problem. And 3 plays before that, we have 2 guys line up on the ball. And then we overcame it with Debo's play there on 3rd and 8. But we didn't because we had 2 guys off the ball. That was a big one. And then to miss the field goal after that. The defense, 3 drives where you have a personal foul on all 3 of those drives. I think 2 of them ended up in points. But that was stuff that we can control, and I didn't get to see them all, but you can't have 3 personal fouls on 3 drives in the second half and expect to win.
As a coach, just how does that make you feel, like these mistakes that keep happening this late into the season?
I mean, just, you know, I'm not going to say that they keep happening when it comes to penalties. Some weeks are worse than others. Today was as bad as it gets. You know, I know we're in the front half of the league when it comes to penalties, but today was, you know, the situations when we got those penalties, how we got them, that was real disappointing.
Did you see the second Pearsall legal formation penalty before it happened? Did you know that was going to be a penalty?
No, I didn't. We went on the quick count, so we need 1 guy on and 1 guy off.
What do you see on Purdy's interception?
It looked like he was going to try to layer the ball over whoever the nickel was, and as he was throwing it, he got hit, so he wasn't able to.
With Dre bringing him out, was that precautionary? Could he have gone back in if you guys needed it?
Oh, I mean, we didn't even discuss it. So once we heard about his calf, we shut him down.
Kyle, is it hard to be your 4th-string running back and with the 3rd-string left tackle, 2nd-string guard, on and on? Is it hard, given that type of injury situation, to kind of judge Brock and his performance, or do you say no, you still got to overcome a lot of this stuff?
I mean, you look at each play. I mean, you don't. That's why you watch film and you don't try to just have a sentence to define the whole game and get on that plane and watch a lot of the film. Yeah, it makes it tougher and stuff for those situations, but just as a team, like regardless of those situations, those penalties I just discussed, I don't want to get into the situations with injuries. We had every opportunity to win that game, and but you don't give yourself an opportunity when you make some of those mistakes.
You mentioned earlier things you can control. As many injuries as you've had this season, it seems like a few times after games you talk about that, things you can control. Is that how much source of frustration, I guess, is that some of this is stuff, isn't the opponent, it's stuff you can control?
Yeah, that's my big frustration. I understand when your backs are against the wall and you have an uphill battle, but when you got first and goal at the 2 and you make it third and goal at the 18 or whatever that is, and you miss a kick and it's completely something that you've done on your own, that's very frustrating. It makes it much harder.
Kittle and Debo seem to be having some of the vintage kind of performances out there. What does that say about them amid the circumstances here?
That's how I expect them to play every week. Those guys are good players, and circumstances to me don't change anything. When you get an opportunity to make a play, I expect guys to do it, and expect those guys to do it as much as anyone in this league.
When you've got backups, in at left tackle and left guard. Does that restrict the plays that you call, or are you calling plays differently because of that setup?
Well, you got to think about all that stuff. Everything goes into it, but you also got to look at what the score is, the time on the clock, down and distance, what they're playing. But everything goes into what you decide on the play call.
The personal penalties, especially the one on Lenore, obviously it can't happen, but how much of that do you think is frustration boiling over on their part just as toward the season's done?
None.
What's your confidence level in Jake Moody right now?
It wasn't good out there missing that kick. I don't know exactly what happened on the snap and the hold, but that's one he's got to make.
How much time did Burford get a tackle this week, or has he got it?
It's been getting all year.
It is.
Yeah. He's been our third all year, so just.
Tua completed a lot of passes to running backs in this game. How do you think he did defending Tua?
Tua completes up. Leads the league in completions. That's what he's great at. So he does a good job at that. Our goal was to play more of the pass, and we knew we'd give up some in the run game. Try to get him to third down. That's what was so frustrating about those 3 penalties. I thought we would have got him to third down, especially on one of them. Gave him some freebies, and you give them too many. Tua's going to make some good throws. I thought he made some big ones today, but that wasn't the reason we lost. It was accumulation of things.
Kelly, here the opening drive, you had 3rd and 1, and Taylor got stopped short. It looked like maybe he did have it. Did you not get a good angle? Did you consider challenging that?
No, I didn't get a good angle, but they said upstairs they didn't think we'd win, so it was a tough short yardage not to get.
You're obviously preoccupied with today, but this is the first time you've been in this stadium since the Super Bowl. Does that enter your mind at all?
I did a little bit when I got into my coach's locker room, but nothing with the game or anything.
As 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan following the 29-17 loss, they fall to a 6-9. Some questions there about Dre Greenlaw. We'll talk more about him as he left the game very early on with an injury, and we'll see if he even sees the field again for the remainder of this year. Will be interesting to see who plays for the Niners in terms of key players, skill position players. Of course, if there's bonuses and incentives and stuff like that, you'd imagine some guys will be out there. But Larry Krueger making the case that maybe it's time to shut down Brock, considering the health of the offensive line or lack thereof, as they get ready to take on the Detroit Lions in Week 17. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. We'll hang with you for about another 20 minutes or so before we throw you over to Sunday Night Football, which is in progress. We'll get you an out-of-town scoreboard as well from across the league in the week that was, eliminating me from fantasy football postseasons left and right. There's been some big performances today. We'll talk about those as well. Adam Copeland, JD, Niners fall to Miami. They're 6-9 on the Sports Leader.
Now it's 3rd and 8 as the Niners are back on the 16-yard line. Red zone woes again. Brock looks left, throws, caught Debo Samuel, and he'll be chopped down.
No, he won't.
Breaking tackles. He goes into the end zone, Debo style. Touchdown! San Francisco!
Debo Samuel finds the end zone. First touchdown since week 6 for Debo in today's game. And he did have a damn good game. 9 targets, 7 catches for 96 yards in that receiving touchdown through the air. And he ran pretty well, too, on the ground. 5 carries, 25. He also had a 13-yard carry in there. And he did look explosive today on a handful of occasions when he did have the ball in his hands. We'll make him the player of the game, sponsored by Bigelow Tea. Grab a mug and tea proudly. I mean, JD, you were joking with me through the game. You were sending me text about Debo Samuel and going, I mean, people are just going to be so frustrated by this. Like, now is the time he's going to show up. It's what Kyle Shanahan has said and believing he's still capable of being the receiver we've known in the past. But anything changed for you after today's game and your perception of what Debo is or can still be for this team?
No, I mean, I echo what Larry said in terms of all signs pointing toward Debo Samuel being back next year. But the 49ers need today's Debo and not the Debo from the last month. Month plus, really 2 months, I guess. You go back, I mean, December 10th or October 10th, the last time he scores a touchdown. If he's going to be around, that's fine. If it makes sense contractually, if Kyle Shanahan loves him and still believes in him, that's all good. But it's got to be more like today's Debo in games that are truly meaningful. I'm not saying it can't happen, but there is the cynical part of me that kind of, of course it happens today, right? They're officially eliminated. It's like, where was that game, in any of the number of games that the 49ers, could have had to maybe get a win, the Rams game or the Seattle game at home. Like if they're, and again, I know it doesn't work that way. And the Dolphins, I think, are probably a better matchup for Debo to be as effective as he was today. But the reality is, no, it doesn't change anything. It does show that he has it in the tank, but how often does he have it in the tank, I think, is the big question, and there's no way that's going to be answered until we get probably 4 or 5 games into next season.
Yeah, so total yards from him today, a pretty damn good game. Again, 96 through the air, 25 on the ground for Debo. But again, this is stuff you want to see consistently happen. And we'll see what happens and how much these guys play. You will need some receivers out there. I imagine we will see Debo against the Lions, but remains to be seen who else could be out there and if Brock Purdy is going to play the remainder of the season just based on the health of the offensive line. We'll see what happens over these next 2 games. Niners fall 29-17 to the Miami Dolphins. 2 more games, one against the Detroit Lions, and then they go to Arizona to wrap up against the Cardinals. We'll get to the drive of the game and a scoreboard from across the league next, and then in about 12 minutes, we'll hand you over to Sunday Night Football already in progress. The Buccaneers taking on the Dallas Cowboys, who were also eliminated from playoff contention today. More to come only here on the Sports Leader.
Niners are 53 yards away from taking the lead here in the last couple of minutes. Brock back, throws a wobbler, intercepted. Got hit as he threw, and Kohu intercepts the ball. Gets up, running back the other way to midfield and out of bounds now. What happened there? Brock got hit. A fluttering ball is stolen by Kadir Kohu, their nickelback.
That's really the way the game ended for the 49ers today, except that Devon Achane did go for a 50-yard touchdown run after that to really, really put the game away and make the score look more lopsided than it was. But the Niners had an opportunity there with about 2 minutes left, the ball in their hands, 3 timeouts, and a chance to drive the field. Brock Purdy had an opportunity there to try to put him in the end zone and give him a chance to win this one. They would have gone up had they scored that touchdown. Even after a Jake Moody missed field goal earlier in the game, we'll make the interception there that ended the Niners' hopes today. The drive of the game, sponsored by El Cerrito Honda, more than just a car dealership. We're family. Niners have it snuffed out there as Brock Purdy gets hit, and sort of fitting considering they really had a tough time trying to run the ball today. The offensive line gets banged up. You've got backups on the left side. I mean, 3rd and 4th string guys now. Nick Shaquille in there at left guard, and you've got Spencer Burford playing left tackle, just something we're not used to seeing him do. And so Brock not protected enough and ends up taking a big hit from Calais Campbell. It was a pretty gnarly hit, too, as the ball just sort of flutters out there. And Kyle Shanahan said in his postgame interview or his postgame press conference, he thought Brock was maybe trying to go over the top of that nickel. It was just a questionable throw anyway, I think, and that's ultimately how it comes to an end. Yeah, and I think there's also some frustration in that the 40, Moody missing that field goal earlier. And look, maybe the Dolphins go for it and instead of just taking the field goal to go up 5. But if you're 22-20 in that situation, you're basically on the brink of field goal range at that point. Then you're starting to think about maybe running the clock out and different things to set it up there. It's just much more free and fluid when you have the opportunity to win the game on a field goal as opposed to a touchdown. And look, Kyle was as pissed as I think we've seen him all year after the Moody missed field goal. Threw the tablet, they had the Pearsall couple of penalties there, and then it all came back. That was the first possession of the second half. All came back to haunt late that possession with the 49ers down 5, and Brock throws the pick, and it winds up ending the night. We will put a bow on this one when we come on back and get you over to your Sunday Night Football already in progress. As it stands right now, they're at the 2-minute warning. Cowboys are up 13-7 on the Buccaneers, who need to win to stay alive and keep their hopes of winning the NFC South alive. So we'll get you over to that game momentarily. When we come on back, we'll wrap this one up. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, Niners fall to Miami 29-17 on the Sports Leader.
I set goals for myself before the season. 1,000 yards is one of those goals. I'd rather be in the playoffs, but getting 1,000 yards it's good.
There's George Kittle. He had another 100-yard receiving day. Did not find the end zone today, but George Kittle, obviously best pass-catching tight end in 49er history. Did he just go over 1,000 yards, or he will go over 1,000? Is that right? Is he at 1,000 yet?
Yeah, looking at the numbers.
I think he's just shy of 1,000, or he may be close to it.
Yeah, I think he's going to get there, assuming he plays in the next couple. Let me actually had it updated.
Yeah, he had 106 today, and I had him at entering play today. He was at 861. So that puts you at 967 or something like that. So he'll get there with 30-plus passing or receiving yards in the next 2 games.
Look, he's been the biggest bright spot for the 49ers.
Yeah, without question. Without question, he has been, especially relative to some of his peers and what they've not been able to do. One, in part due to injury, but also the success of guys like Debo Samuel or lack thereof.
And I think he come into the year, wouldn't you say, and maybe this is slightly out of left field, but wouldn't you say he came into the year where maybe there was a thought that at the end of this season we'd be, George Kittle's declining. Like, he is completely not declining. Like, I think it was on the table.
Yeah, I think it was on the table that he'd be a guy that was maybe trending towards a decline, like you pointed out.
Yeah, he would look like Debo, basically, and that maybe Debo would continue to look the way that he's looked, and now it's just, I mean, Kittle's just been amazing. Like, you got to keep that guy.
Yeah, he's been the lone bright spot. He's been the lone bright spot. What he does for you in the run game is fantastic. That's going to do it for us here on the 49er Postgame Show. Make sure you stay tuned. We will throw you over to the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Dallas. That game is already in progress, and they are just after the 2-minute warning there. I believe it's actually now 19-7. Dallas found the end zone again. 19-7, I believe, is the they just got in. It's a rushing touchdown by Zeke Elliott. Found the end zone. 20-7 now with 1:45 to play in the first half. Niners fall. What was the final here? 29-17 is the final after the Achane 50-yard rushing touchdown really puts this thing away. Niners fall to 6-9. We'll be talking about it tomorrow, starting 6 a.m. with the KNBR morning show, and then 10 to 2, of course. You got Greg and Greg rolling into Dirty Work, the final Dirty Work of 2024. For John Dickinson, thanks a lot to Tim, who did a great job for us today. Ralph was here this morning helping out on pregame. Kyle, and Ryan, who are all helping cut sound and make sure things are rolling smoothly here at the Leader. Thanks to you guys, and great work today. Niners fall 29-17. JD, we'll see you this week, huh?
Looking forward to it, man. I'm on that morning show tomorrow, 6 a.m. with Dieter Kurtenbach. So quick turnaround for me, but looking forward to it, man. Going to be a lot of fun.
Get some rest. Lots to talk about tomorrow. Again, Niners fall 29-17. They fall to 6-9. We'll throw you over to the Sunday night football game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road in Dallas, trailing 20-7. That's all coming up only here on the Sports Leader.